Good evening and welcome to unfortunately, our final regular season edition of Boomer Breakdown. My name is Jason Ray. Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma 37-33 in what was just such a crazy game for Oklahoma. Come join me for the next hour or so, however long you guys want to stay here. We'll talk. Certainly we'll break down the game. We'll talk about everything else surrounding this Oklahoma football program right now, moving forward, and just everything. That really, like I said, surrounded this game. So. Kind of the same things that Oklahoma has struggled with throughout the year that they struggled with here in this game. First and foremost, I'm going to kind of get this out of the way and talk about the officiating. Was about as bad as I've seen all year. A couple of calls specifically, went against Oklahoma. Obviously, the throw in the end zone late there, where Jaden Hazelwood is almost is almost tackled, and he and that's not thrown. That flag's not thrown. The late hit on Kennedy Brooks when Oklahoma was backed up again. They throw the flag and then they pick it up, and just it was bad. Just overall, don't think that's the reason necessarily. Well, certainly would have given them a chance to win the game late there, but don't necessarily think that it's the reason why Oklahoma lost this game. However, when you look at penalties, Oklahoma I think had around 12 penalties, a lot of pre-snap penalties, both on the offense and defensive lines. Offensive line was very inconsistent from time to time. Pass blocking, wasn't horrible throughout the game. Run blocking was very kind of inconsistent. And it was really just a tale of two halves, I think, for Oklahoma. Oklahoma played pretty well, specifically offensively in the first half. Mixed in a lot of the pass and the run. Was sometimes they would run on first down, sometimes they would, was Lincoln Riley had them on their heels a little bit. Went that the H back and the tight end was really open, took advantage of that opportunity, and as good as the game plan was in the first half, it was about equally as bad in the second half. A lot of situations where Oklahoma would run the ball, then they would go 2, 3 straight plays with dropping Caleb back and throwing the ball. So at the end of the day, you've got to find a way to put points on the board offensively in the second half. I think Oklahoma had less than they might have had over 100 yards with that with the Caleb Williams run there on the last possession. But having said that, really inconsistent play on the offensive side of the ball late. I think defensively played well enough for them to win the game, obviously, but offensively didn't play good enough, and just untimely mistakes. If you think about it, Oklahoma in this game, got a lot of things handed to them earlier in the game. There was the pass interference play on third down against Oklahoma State that allowed the drive to continue. There was another penalty on the next drive that allowed the drive to continue. I think there was some obviously the safety that Oklahoma got. The Oklahoma forced that, and then Oklahoma got the obviously the touchdown on the muff punt. So I think there's a lot of Oklahoma got a lot of breaks in the first half, and I think Oklahoma State got a lot of breaks in the second half. Just in terms of the punt, the muff punt, which was huge. Don't know why you try to secure that ball, try to even field that ball inside the 5, and just like I said, just inconsistent play. There's some times where Caleb Williams played his butt off. He did everything that he could. He was. And then a big issue for this team is at the wide receiver position. They don't have elite speed. They don't have the ability to get open. There was a lot of times where Caleb Williams had enough time there in the second half. The receivers just weren't getting open. So a lot of things to go through. With this kind of moving forward. Offense I think Ryan, it was you that had the comment. I haven't put it on the screen yet, but very schizophrenic in terms of the way they played. Oklahoma's got to find a way to combat this umbrella defense that these teams play against Oklahoma. So so now Oklahoma, obviously, for the first time in 6 years, they won't have the opportunity to play for a Big 12 championship. I think I think there's a lot of people that will maybe agree with me. I think there's a lot of people that might, if you're sunshine pumpers. I'm not necessarily one of those guys, but I consider this an extremely disappointing season. Yes, you finished the season a double. You won 10 games. However, I think the bar set for this season was at the very least a playoff game. But I think the bar was a lot of people, including me, thought this team had the talent to play for a national championship, maybe even win a national championship. And to go from where they are at and to where they were projected to be early on in the season into exactly um, where they're at now, not even playing not even having the opportunity to win a Big 12 championship is very, very disappointing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a big next few days. So, I know there's been tons of conversation about this over the last few days. So I think, let's just go ahead and get it out there and talk about it. Does Lincoln Riley take the LSU job if it's offered to him? I think so. From what I've been hearing today, from more of some confirmed reports, I think LSU as early as tomorrow will probably offer Lincoln Riley the head coaching job. I think he'll probably be offered anywhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million a year. If he will, if he was to go to LSU, he would be the highest paid head coach in the country. So me right now, I don't necessarily think that he'll go. I would be. I don't think he will. I wouldn't be surprised if he does, but I wouldn't be. I don't think that he will. Having said that, some of the things that I've heard from some of the insiders here on the Oklahoma side over the last couple of days is that Lincoln Riley's not necessarily looking to go. Um, I think there's some assurances that he would like to have within the Oklahoma football program. I think the compliance issue. We've talked about this on this show from time to time. There's some compliance issues that Oklahoma is way more strict than some of their counterparts at the blue blood level. So, but I've also heard from some reliable sources that if Oklahoma were to win this game tonight and put themselves in position for a Big 12 championship, put themselves in position to possibly make the playoffs, then he definitely was going to stay. He definitely would stay, and he would not really entertain the thought of leaving. However, should Oklahoma lose this game, they're not in the Big 12 championship game. They're going to probably, I would say, either the Alamo Bowl or the Cheez-It Bowl are probably the two destinations for Oklahoma this season. There's a good chance that going to strongly consider it. So there's even some reports out there that there's a verbal agreement right now. So the facts that I do know is there has been several LSU recruits that have followed Lincoln Riley on Twitter. There's been several LSU coaches, namely the LSU head basketball coach, LSU head baseball coach that has followed Riley. Now I don't put a whole lot of stock into that. So, anyways, I'm not reporting anything obviously here. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily think he will go, but it's something to keep an eye on here. Over the next couple of days. If it happens, I'm sure it will happen by pretty soon, by Monday or Tuesday. So let's talk, and then I'll take some of your questions. I think it's one thing that's interesting as part of this, outside of this game. I think this was a great Saturday of college football. Michigan beating Ohio State. Michigan played really, really well. Then you've got the Alabama Auburn game that went down to the wire. So really, really great games there. And then obviously, I don't know if anyone's going to watch this or anyone really cares, but Oklahoma State and Baylor. Oklahoma State probably makes the playoffs with a win. Oklahoma probably would have too. So here's some things that I'm kind of thinking about just off the cuff in terms of uh, where Oklahoma needs to go after the season, kind of from a trajectory perspective. Just assuming Riley is still back, and I think I think some of the things that they need to look at on the offensive side of the ball, and I've said a few of these things before, so some of this might be a little bit repetitive for you guys that have continuously watched and continuously listened to me here. So I think the offensive scheme on the offensive line, the run game, I think is a bit complicated. I think, it's one of those things that continues to be, it continues to show itself in recruiting. It continues to show itself on the level of play, the confusion that sometimes Oklahoma has in the run game. Riley is very, very well known for this GT counter. It's not, um, it almost seems like to an extent it's run its course. So I think that's something that they strongly need to look at in the offseason, just in terms of the way Oklahoma attacks on the offensive side of the ball. I think a glaring issue here is the lack of playmakers on at the wide receiver position as well. That's been a problem over the last couple of games, really just not being able to get open. Look at a guy like Marvin Mims. I don't know that he had a catch tonight at all. So I, his ability to fight through contact and things like that has been well chronicled, and he's not the only one, but I think in general Oklahoma has had a problem at the wide receiver position, just not getting separation, not getting open. You've seen that a lot of times with Caleb Williams today. He would have time in the pocket, and he would just really have to cycle through the receivers, and no one would be open. So he would have to either take a sack, or he would just have to scramble as long as he could and just scramble. So I think those are a couple of things on the offensive side of the ball. I think I've said this for a while. I am not, me personally, a big proponent of your head coach being a coordinator, whether he's the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator. Don't have a problem with Riley being the quarterback coach. I think he needs to bring in a play caller. Now, I do not think that he'll do this outside of his, bringing in his brother to call plays, because the way that Lincoln Riley is, I think he does not feel like he is anyone can call plays at the same level that he does. So those are a couple of things that I see on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, I think you didn't see it as much today, but Oklahoma um, really gets manhandled at the point of attack, really by everyone. They've had problems, stopping the run, just generically speaking, with some of those teams that will run a little bit of power at them. So, there's some thoughts around the speed D type of moniker that Alex Grinch has brought over to Oklahoma, in terms of just the ability for Oklahoma to have defenders at the defensive line that were really more lighter and just not as strong as they need to be, too light, I think, on the defensive line. So does Oklahoma make a little bit of a change there, and just terms of their mentality on what they want their defensive linemen to look like? It was one thing. So I think that's the one thing. And will Grinch be back? I think there's been a lot of some things that I've heard that Grinch and Riley don't really necessarily seem eye to eye, just in terms of how practice should go. I think Grinch is looking for practice to be much more physical than what Riley really wants that to be from a practice perspective. So yeah, I think that's one. And then obviously, what's the future at the head coaching position? Is Riley back? Does he take the LSU job? What does that look like? I'm not. I've never, you guys that have listened to me, I've never come in here and been an advocate for anyone being fired, but um, I've heard so many different people talk about Remark. and not just fans. I mean, people in the public eye, people that follow have inside knowledge into this program, and to a T, everybody keeps talking about how soft this team is, and I think that comes from, to a certain extent, comes from Riley. But I think from a strength and conditioning perspective, I think that Oklahoma's not where they need to be. So I think a change is probably needed at the strength and conditioning coach at a minimum. So, the good thing is that Oklahoma has had, in 2023, the recruiting class is really, really strong. 2022, is not quite as good as 2023, but it's trending in the right direction here for signing day, coming up in the next couple of weeks. Um, so yeah, a lot of things to figure out for Oklahoma. Like I said, I think the next couple of days are going to be critical if I would say probably by Tuesday or Wednesday, if LSU has not named Riley as the head coach, then obviously, he's declined the offer, and he'll stay. He's going to be at Oklahoma. So, um, like I said, those of you that maybe joined a little bit late, wouldn't be surprised if he wouldn't be surprised if he went. At the same time, if you were to, lay the cards down on the table, I would say that he's still here. When you think about some of the pluses and minuses of a guy, I mean, obviously, if they're going to give you that kind of money to be the highest paid coach in America, it's certainly something that's very flattering. Obviously, as a head coach, specifically a head coach that's never won, it's not won a national championship. However, there's probably a little bit more pressure at LSU than there is at Oklahoma. Um, I know the monster is getting hungrier and hungrier here at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's currently in the midst of the longest national championship drought that they've had. At the University of Oklahoma, it's right now looking at when the national championship is played, it would be a full 22 years since Oklahoma's won the national championship, and haven't been in the position to play for a national championship for a while, since I think 2008 when Oklahoma lost to Florida. I believe that was the year. So I think that monster is getting stronger, in terms of what that looks like. So, in any event, I think it's going to be an interesting lead up to Oklahoma's bowl game. Like I said, I would anticipate, um, if there's a chance that Oklahoma could get selected for an at-large bid for the New Year's Six bowl game. Wouldn't necessarily. I wouldn't count on it. I think if Oklahoma State, just from a bowl pecking order perspective, I think the way this would work out. If Oklahoma State beats Baylor, I think they're probably in the playoffs, barring an Alabama upset of Georgia. So if they make the playoffs, that puts Baylor in the Sugar Bowl, which probably puts Oklahoma at no worse than the Alamo Bowl, depending on what that happens. So if Oklahoma State does not make it to the playoffs, I think you've got an Oklahoma State Sugar Bowl. I think you've got a Baylor. Um, I think you've got a Baylor Alamo Bowl, and then you've got an Oklahoma, probably Cheez It Bowl, which will just be really depressing based on what Oklahoma was looking at, to start the season. So, um, yeah, so a lot of things to talk through. Tell me what your thoughts are. Do you guys honestly? I mean, I know there's a lot of fatigue from this game right now. Do you think what's your percentages? What do you think? Any chance that Riley goes to LSU? What's your thoughts on who you think could be a potential replacement if he does? What are some things that Oklahoma needs to do to make a next step, in terms of being a legitimate program? And when I say legitimate, just in terms of being what they need to be. Oklahoma needs to be a Big 12 championship contending, playoff team. So, as far as that goes, I think just from a short list perspective, If Riley, just entertaining the thought, if Riley were to leave, I think there's a lot of thought around around Aranda. I think that would be a potential, a good hire. I've heard Shane Beamer's name thrown around. I don't think that's a legitimate thought. Beamer could be a great head coach, but he's only got 1 year at South Carolina. Everything I've heard, he loves it there, so I don't really think that would be an option. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of potential discussion. Would Bob Stoops come back for at least a couple of years, just in terms of being able to kind of right the ship, keeping everything on the keeping the wheels on the bus, so to speak. So it's something that what he's learned from Snyder at Kansas State did the same thing. Um, came back for few years, kind of solidified the program again, and then obviously retired again. So, um, crazier things, crazier things have happened. I think, if I think Bob would have a little bit of maybe regret, and if Riley left, if he did decide to leave, a little bit of regret, and just in terms of um, exactly. He handed the keys to Riley, and then he leaves, 5 years later. So, I think that could creep into the back of his mind. So, yeah, a lot of interesting discussion points. I'm not, I think that I've seen a lot of comments here about Caleb Williams. Don't really have any concerns about him and going into the future. I think he's certainly the quarterback of the future, at least for next year. Um, with I think it'll be interesting to see what Spencer Rattler does. I think he probably declares for the draft. It's not necessarily a strong quarterback draft right now. You've got Sam Howell, you've got Matt Corral as a couple of guys. So, um, but yeah, I think he'll be fine moving forward. Um, yeah, so a lot of comments. Bring your comments, and Bobby, great comment here. Hire Patty Gasso. That's right. I've heard a lot of people talk about just as a joke that Oklahoma is a softball school, um, but yeah. Martin, thanks for jumping in again here. Do you feel Riley and Griff need to change their offense and defensive philosophy moving forward? I think so, to a certain extent. I mean, Martin, I hate to just be completely critical of the um, of the head coach and the game plan. I think this is, for my money, I think this has probably been the worst year that Riley has had, just in terms of play calling. It's just it's been all over the place. I think he's abandoned the run way too soon on and a lot of times in a lot of games, I should say. Um, I think there were some times tonight, I should say, where he was very inconsistent and what he was doing. So, and then the defensive philosophy, based on what I said, I think they need to get a little bit bigger and stronger up front. I think they've got to, and I think it remains to be seen. They could possibly lose all of these guys on the defensive line. Jalen Redmond, Isaiah Thomas, Nick Benito, Perion Winfrey. Wouldn't be surprised if all of them left at the end of the year. For Oklahoma. So if they do, they've got to retool. They've got some good players ready, I think, waiting in the wings. But but yeah, I think that defensive philosophy. I think one of the things that's interesting to me, Martin, just in general, is just how unfundamentally sound this team is. Um, Unfundamentally sound, and I don't know that that's really a word. I just kind of made it up here, but and just the lack of attention to detail. So this team has all year has been a very poor tackling team. It wasn't horrible tonight. It was bad at times, but just so many, just undisciplined, so many penalties, um, so many pre-snap penalties, both on the defense and offensive line. It's just discipline, attention to detail, and things like that. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of a change in philosophy on both sides of the ball that's needed. Um, Chad for Oklahoma State to be a horrible OU team. It took the worst of history. It was really bad. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the worst. And there's something. I've heard some Texas people just throughout this year kind of complaining about the officiating that they've had based on that, and the fact that Oklahoma and Texas are leaving for the SEC. It's a thing. Like it's not something that's just not really. Um, it's not really anything that's incredibly surprising. I think we watching from an Oklahoma perspective haven't seen that all year, but then it reared its ugly head. There was about 4 or 5 penalties in this game that were very, very questionable or lack thereof. Especially the pass interference in the end zone. It was egregious. Very, very bad. So I'm not saying that this is the reason why um, Oklahoma lost the game, but it was a really big indicator, especially late there, um, in the game. We got to hire Aranda. So there's a lot of love about Dave Aranda, and I think the one thing that I like about him is he has had a track record defensively as being one of the best defensive minds in the country. Regardless of where he's been, a lot of different places. He's been at Utah State and then obviously at LSU as the defensive coordinator before Baylor. And the fact that he's turned that team around from 2-10 a year ago, mind you, they were still very competitive last year at 2-10, but moving them from 2-10 to 10-2 and possibly in line for a Big 12 championship. Who knows if chaos happens next week, possibly in line for a potential playoff spot. I don't think that they can get there, even with a dominating win over Oklahoma State. They just, with the 2 losses. But yeah, I mean, he's done an outstanding job. Probably, I mean, certainly the Big 12 Coach of the Year, maybe maybe nationally Coach of the Year. So he would be on a short list if it was me, at Oklahoma if Riley did decide to go. Again, not saying that he will or for anybody that's joined us late. There's been no decision made or nothing imminent. I saw something on Twitter from a reputable source that looked like that, said that Oklahoma or Lincoln Riley had verbally agreed to a deal should Oklahoma lose this game. So again, don't know. It's not from a national media, but it's from um, a guy that Josh Pate kind of goes back and forth with. And those that don't know, Josh Pate very, very reputable in the media business. So the fact that he's kind of bantering here back and forth with this person. Wouldn't be surprised at all. Still, like I said, don't think it will. I personally don't think it would happen if I was to bet right now, but again, would not be completely surprised if it did. A lot of thoughts about Matt Campbell. I think he's pretty much. I think he's set in stone to USC after this weekend. I would be a lot of things that I've heard is he's pretty much confirmed to USC right now. So would be surprised if he goes anywhere else. Let's see. MWG. It's one of the biggest questions. I think Eric Gray to me has been, a really big disappointment. He's not been as good as I would have anticipated him being. Really even out of the backfield as a receiver. So, you know, I think he'll be part of the rotation next year for sure. Would anticipate Kennedy Brooks leaving at the end of this year, but he'll be a big part of the rotation next year. You'll have Eric Gray conceivably probably back. Marcus Major. Then then you'll have the incoming freshman Gavin Salchuk, and not sure what Oklahoma will do with Rayleigh Brown. I think he's kind of a RBWR type of player, but he's electric. That kid's electric. I think he's going to be somebody that plays instantly for Oklahoma next year, provided Oklahoma's able to get him on campus and he signs. That he will. Um, I think he will be a factor, whether it be at the running back or the wide receiver position. Um, so Very, very good point, and there's a lot of points that I've heard about this Lincoln Riley and LSU thing, and one of the prevailing points is that I've heard is, with this day and age and the way that the transfer portal is and everything like that, Riley could just kind of pick and choose to a certain extent some of the guys that he wants to take with him. I mean, and I would expect that Caleb Williams might be one of those guys that he would want to take with him. So I think that's the fear. Above everything else, I think there's a lot of people that I feel like Lincoln's soft, and I'm one of them. And I think he can learn. It's only his fifth season as a head coach, fourth season as a head coach. And he has the opportunity to learn and grow, and kind of mold himself into the coach that he wants to be. And we're never a finished product. We can always improve and get better. But I think, that's the kind of the moniker around the program, that, he's a little soft. And I think the team has kind of embodied that personality. So, interesting to see. But yeah, I think if he leaves, then would not be surprised if Caleb went with him, and then Oklahoma's in the world of hurt if that's the case. Then I think Oklahoma probably either would be looking at the transfer portal or be doing everything they could to talk Rattler into coming back for another year, which, I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but if that were to happen, then um, that's a possibility. Um, I don't think he would even go to. I don't know. I mean, I think he was real. I mean, he was really close. I don't know. The whole thing with some of these recruits, Chad. You don't know if they fell in love with the school, or they fell in love with the coach and whoever recruited them. I think that's a little bit of a little bit of a mystery. Love the participation. We've got 88 people in here. Keep them coming. I'll stay here as long as you guys want to talk. Let's try to get at least 100 in here. That'd be great. Just to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Future of Oklahoma, Big 12, move to the SEC, Lincoln Riley, LSU, Lincoln Riley staying. What's Oklahoma got to do to be a championship contender? And really, this is probably you know the worst season that Oklahoma has had under Riley. I mean, I know that this is the first year that they've they've lost two games last year, but still was able to work their way back into a Big 12 championship. And now they've got two losses, and they're not even in the Big 12 championship. So, a lot of thoughts around that for sure. Big 12 doesn't want OU leaving there with their championship, and we were too. Yeah, I think that's a very, very fair statement. Um, Brent, thanks for the comment. I think it was too small in the deal. Not as nearly athletic online. No fin. Couldn't say agree with all 3 points. Definitely too small. And on the offensive line, not as athletic and just not as good. They don't have as much talent. I know that Oklahoma's recruited well here for the 2022 cycle at the offensive line, but I think the the complexity that Oklahoma has in terms of a lot of their schemes has turned away. I've heard Gabe Eicher talk about this in detail, just talking about, well, specifically how his Oklahoma's scheme is just so sophisticated that hardly any teams in the country at the FBS level run it, and there's a lot of schemes that very few NFL teams even run any of what Oklahoma does, just because of the complexity. I think making it simple will help bring in some recruits. I mean, especially if let's move more to a zone scheme, and I think that will be good. Um, yeah, I think from everything that I've heard, Chad, I think Oklahoma and Texas are probably in the Big 12 one more year, and then the move comes in the 2023 season. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, Oklahoma and even Texas to that extent is going to have to deal with this situation that Oklahoma dealt with in this game through the rest of the time that Oklahoma's in the Big 12. Um, one of the things that I don't know is what Lincoln Riley's buyout is. I should be able to find that out. Um, I mean, I think it was a big indicator. I don't necessarily say it's the only reason, um, that Oklahoma lost, but I think it was a big factor, especially um, that late pass interference in the end zone. Oklahoma should have had the ball at the 2-yard line with a chance to go in for the win there. So, that's fair. Um Brett, the flags were suspicious. Like Big 12 said, okay, leave it. I think that's very. I mean, publicly, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it was too blatant. I think on a lot of situations, that was bad. I think that was Williams' worst play of the game. Just him running out of bounds. There, yeah, I agree with you. Return trip. Um, if we goes to the SEC without major overhaul, we will have losing seasons. I'm glad you brought this up. This is something that I talked about, when the announcement came, about sorry, I didn't know I was that dark there. When the announcement came about Oklahoma moving to the SEC, and just for everybody to know, Oklahoma's going to take some lumps. The one thing that I said, to me, success in the SEC is making a trip to the SEC championship game every 5 years, and then winning an SEC championship once every 10 years. I think that is a reasonable expectation for OU, at least early on. But yeah, they are going to take some lumps. I think if Oklahoma's in the SEC this year, it's probably a 7-5 team. So you're definitely right. Um, the only thing, I wouldn't say owns him. I mean, he is 1-1 against him. I mean, if you want to talk about him being defensive coordinator at LSU, when they beat Oklahoma in the college football playoff game, then that's fair. The one thing, the only thing that I would have a knock on, and it's not really a knock on Randa, but the fact that it's only his second year as a head coach. I think that would be the concern, the only concern for me. But the fact that he took Baylor from 2-10 to 10-2 this year with a chance to win a championship in just a second year as head coach I think is a remarkable job that he's done just there. Um, no, you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, that's exactly what I've heard, I've seen and heard as well, that he's ready to sign an extension. However, I think if this were to happen with Lincoln and Oklahoma's looking and they came calling, I think it would be hard for him to say no. So we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting um, to see how that kind of works through the next few days. Um, I think he was. I don't know if this is just kind of Lincoln's direction, trying to get him to stay in the pocket more and not run as much. But I think he's hesitant at times to run. I don't know if he's worried about getting hurt, or like I said, if it's just Riley in his here trying to keep him in the pocket, being a pocket passer as opposed to just being a runner. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things. And there's not a whole lot of zone read in this game. I think you saw it a couple of times that Oklahoma hasn't incorporated. So, Chad, I agree with you. I think Aranda would certainly take the job. At least he would really think about it. Um, let's see. And I mean, obviously, the last defensive-minded coach that Oklahoma has had, and Bob Stoops, was a success. I'm not saying that Lincoln Riley has not been successful. He's taken Oklahoma to the playoffs and what was it, 3 consecutive years. But still, um, time to rebuild. OU about to lose many over. Yep, I agree. I think Oklahoma's losing those four. I think Redmond and Winfrey are the only ones that are iffy to me. I mean, I think Benito and Thomas are definitely gone. I know that Redmond at the beginning of the year said that this was going to be his last year. But I don't know as much time as he's missed. I think all of those kids are NFL guys. I think the problem that we're having, I think, and it's a little bit of discipline problem. They've talked about it a little bit on the broadcast, but specifically with Winfrey, I think he has the ability to be dominant. I mean, at times he was tonight. He played extremely, extremely well most of the game. Clearly, clearly his best, his best game at Oklahoma. And one thing I'll mention here, just kind of saw this. Lincoln Riley was asked a question about LSU and said he's not going to be the next head coach at LSU. So take it with a grain of salt. Whatever that means. He won't be the first person to deny it and then just and end up doing it. But this was the first flat out denial. So we'll see how that goes. But he did deny that, saying I'm not going to be the next head coach at LSU. Next question. So. Um, let's see. Whatever questions people, JP, people could say we need the first round man, just don't see it. Yeah, I don't know that he's necessarily a first round pick. I think he's one of those kids that very much in the mold of Winfrey has taken plays off, has taken series off a lot of times, and that's something that you obviously can't do at the next level. An absolute embarrassing year, waste of eligibility for all this talent. That's the only complete game. And I think Preston complementary football, I think, has been the biggest concern for me over the last couple of years, and then obviously continue to be a concern that Oklahoma could not seem to get on the same page with each other um, as well. So Chad, only way I'll block anyone is for saying anything inappropriate. I mean, everyone has their right to their opinion, and it's too soon for. I mean, I'm not going to call you crazy by saying Oklahoma, that Lincoln Riley's not the right man. I'm not going to say that I completely agree with your opinion, um, but yeah, I definitely won't block you for any of that. I think that's ridiculous. Um, OU stuff is, I think it was very fitting, to say the least. Um, yep. Let's see. LJ. Now you go to a bowl game, play depleted SEC, and Eric and act like they. I don't think so. I mean, anybody that if Oklahoma goes to, unless they happen to go to it, get to a New Year's Six bowl game, I think that might be different. But no, I don't think anybody will be happy for what um, where Oklahoma should have been, and based on where they're going to be at now. Um, if Caleb leaves, then I think Rattler's gone one way or the other. Either he transfers to another team, or he's in the portal. I think one of two things happen. I don't think I would mind it as Riley left, as long as he didn't cost us. I mean, and it would. I mean, it absolutely would. Um, I think it would cause some issues from a recruiting perspective, without a doubt. Um, and Tanner, I love this comment. I think and I don't know where it is. Maybe it's just the strength and conditioning side. Maybe it's just the mindset. Whatever it is, change within kind of the university standards and whatever some of the assurance that Lincoln was wanting before, basically saying no to LSU. I think the there's a lot of changes, not necessarily within replacing coaches, but I think there's a lot of changes from a mentality perspective that are needed for this team coming into next year, without a doubt. Is there any SEC coaches on the radar of Lincoln Riley leaves? It's a good question, Martin. I really haven't really thought about it in detail, just in terms of what Oklahoma would look for. Like I said, I think Aranda would be a guy that would be on the short list. There's a lot of people that think Heupel would be a guy. I don't think so. I think that bridge has kind of been burned. I don't. I don't think Heupel really has any affinity to to Oklahoma right now. So, good question. Not really, not any SEC coaches that on my radar that I would think of that Oklahoma would go after. Like I said, there's a few, but I think David Aranda would probably be at the top of the list. Chad, I would think that we find out and we know something probably by Monday or Tuesday, one way or the other. I think if there's no announcement made at all, I think Riley's still here for the long haul. Now, I think we could hear something as early as tomorrow that he's been offered the job. Um, so we'll see. But like yeah, I think like I said, no later than Tuesday. I think. Yep. I mentioned that on the broadcast here just now. He's not going. He wouldn't be the first person to say publicly he's not going anywhere and then decide to go there. But yeah, I think that's a good confirmation right there. Um, yeah, rude awakening. Completely agree. Completely agree. I think, like I said, I think Oklahoma was a 5 or possibly a 6 loss team this year if they're in the SEC. Um, maybe 7-5. Yep. Agree with. Yep. And that's the first thing I mentioned. That would be the only change that I would say. Um, that I would say is need. So, guys, listen. I know what he said. I heard what he said. I mean, I saw this. Saw this tweet come across, but he would. What's he supposed to say right now? He said, "Oh, I don't know. We'll see what happens. If he says that, then he opens everything up. I don't. It's not anything that he would say. That's what he has to say right now. So, but we'll see what happens in the next couple of days." Hey Jesse, offense line was poor this week, as in week one. We had to get it figured out in the offseason. Yep, I completely agree. There's got to be something that's done as well. So the one thing that I don't want to see here is on the Lincoln Riley side, I don't want to see Oklahoma give him a raise. And it may happen, and it may be kind of short-sighted on me to say this, but he shouldn't get a raise for mediocrity, and this is a mediocre year for Oklahoma standards. So if that's the bargaining chip, and that's what I mean, and I know that happens in the coaching industry, but wouldn't expect that to happen this year. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm just going to refer to my last comment. That's exactly what he has to say at this point. He's not going to say anything different. But we'll see. Mostly because I don't think he's actually been offered a job yet. I from what I've been told, I think that will come on Sunday tomorrow. Um, Very good question, JB. This is something that me and my dad watching the game were contemplating. I'm not sure why he ever replaced Mims on the punt return and then Mims immediately came back. Don't have a clue. Again, there was obviously some reasoning behind it, but don't know why that was. I can't wait for White to go. The linebackers are horrible. They attack. The one thing that I will say is Brian Asamoah has been outstanding the last 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 games for Oklahoma. Without a doubt, he's been really good. Um, Definitely has been really good. Whether it's, unless we did he give a definite no? I think the quote that he said that he basically said that he's not going to be the next. Let me answer this now. I'm not going to be the next head coach at LSU. Next question. So, again, he's saying what he has to say in the heat of the moment, right there. Not saying that. Not saying that he's not right in saying that, but I'm just saying that's what he has to say right there. Um, Jay, and I mean, for me, I think Grinch has been on an upward trajectory for the first 2 years. I think, there was a lot of culture change, a couple years ago, for Oklahoma. Last year was really, really good, especially the back half of the year, and I think this year was a steady decline and a clear regression. So I think, you give him another year to see if he's able to kind of turn it around, get some more of his players in there, and then see where they're at. Rick Aaron, look, he doesn't have that grown man toughness that Stoops has. He's soft. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one thing that you can say about him is he's definitely has some softness to him. Now, I think this would be interesting. We were kind of joking about that, um, just about declining that bowl game. I mean, at the end of the day, at 10-2, you probably won't decline a bowl game because those extra practices are very, very critical for some of those younger kids as well. Um, but I think it's a nice thought in theory, um, without a doubt. So we talked about this a little bit, Big Hud, but just I think probably Alamo Bowl or Cheez It Bowl. I think a lot of it depends on what happens with Oklahoma State and Baylor next week. From a bowl pecking order perspective, I believe that if Oklahoma State wins, they probably make the playoffs, barring an Alabama upset over Georgia. If they make the playoffs, that puts Baylor in the Gator Bowl or in the Sugar Bowl, and that puts Oklahoma likely in the Alamo Bowl. Should Oklahoma State lose or not make the playoffs, then you've got then Oklahoma gets dropped one more peg down. You've got Oklahoma State in the Sugar Bowl. You've got likely Baylor going to the Alamo Bowl, and then you've got Oklahoma in the Cheez It Bowl. So I think it's a double edged sword. I mean, as an Oklahoma fan, you probably don't want to see Oklahoma State make the playoffs. However, having said that, I think if Oklahoma State doesn't make the playoffs, I think the Alamo Bowl is a much better fit for Oklahoma than the Cheez It Bowl, and that's just not a good look for Oklahoma. So that's where I see them. I think Oklahoma State beats Baylor. I think it'll be a close game. I think Oklahoma State's a little bit better than them. Why does our offense suck? Good question, Jesse. It's very inconsistent. I think there's times where it's good, and there's times where it's really, really bad. I think we Riley has done I mean, at times he's done a poor job of calling plays this year. I think the offensive line struggles has been part of the reason why he has neglected to run a little bit too quickly sometimes. But I think just the ability of the offensive line, and I think receivers not getting separation are the three big keys. And then you have Caleb Williams as a true freshman. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to be inconsistent. So I think those are the things that I see kind of in conjunction with one another, that that causes problems. Two losses every year does not cut it at a place like Oklahoma. Yeah, I think Oklahoma's at a clear crossroad right now, given the expectations that they had coming into the season, given the fact, to your point, Eric, that Oklahoma will have back-to-back two-loss seasons, potentially three losses, depending on what happens in the bowl game. So I think that's very, very a very valid point. He led the team to the first to the to the college football playoffs in the first 3 years, and then now here these last 2 years, a two loss season in both seasons. Or at the very least a two-loss season. So, think it's a big year off season for Oklahoma and the Lincoln Riley as well. Um, yeah, I think that's interesting, Chad. If he does stay, I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. I would be surprised if. I mean, I think he needs to. I would be surprised if Lincoln hires a play caller. Um, I would be surprised if, honestly, if anything happens other than the strength and conditioning, and I don't even know if that will happen, just because of the fact that um, Just the sheer fact that Lincoln Riley is very rewarding to the guys that he's been with. He's a Texas Tech guy. So is Benny Wiley. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be. I mean, if it's the Alamo Bowl, I think Oklahoma faces Oregon. If it's the Cheez It Bowl, not sure who that is. Probably Sugar Bowl. Obviously, Oklahoma has no chance at the Sugar Bowl, but Sugar Bowl is probably likely either Oklahoma State or Baylor against Ole Miss. I would guess maybe Alabama, but likely Ole Miss. I think in that situation. Um, I think Rocky thanks for the comment. Williams may have not done well, but props to him. That kid, he played his butt off. He was going on and on and on, um, moving around. You could tell he was so exhausted at the end of the game. Um, I hope this is a joke, Michael. Um, but if it's not, 37-33 Oklahoma State. Um, do people really care about the bowl game? I just can't seem to. I mean, for a team like Oklahoma, I mean, I think that's you know they won't care about the game as much. I mean, look at Florida last year. I mean, they were within a score of beating Alabama, and then look at what they did against us. Um, didn't care. So I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma either one of those bowls didn't have a whole lot of momentum into that game. I agree, and I think I'm glad you mentioned culture. There's a huge. I mean, above all else, Ryan, there is an unbelievably big culture problem at Oklahoma right now. I think they are soft. I think that the accountability is not there. I think the fundamental teaching is not there. I think the discipline is not there. So there's a lot of things there culturally that Oklahoma needs to change without a doubt. No matter who's the coach next year. This is a good question, Ryan. We talked about this a little bit. Personally, I think the strength and conditioning is a change that has to be made. Now, I think any other changes, wouldn't be incredibly surprised if Grinch left and went somewhere else, took a head coaching job or whatever. I mean, he won't. I don't think he'll get fired, but wouldn't be surprised to see some changes. I don't know that he will do it, but I think on the offensive side of the ball, a play caller needs to happen. Um, I don't know. I don't really want any of Lane Kiffin at Oklahoma. I just don't think it's a good fit for for him. So, Jesse, I would like Oklahoma to hire. I mean, if at least a play caller. I mean, if not an offensive coordinator and a play caller. Um, if he wants to continue, if Riley wants to continue to coach the quarterbacks, I think that's fine. But I think a play caller is needed. Um, Dan, thanks for the comment. For you to be taken seriously, Grinch has to go, and Lincoln Lions should give up play calling due to the find offensive coordinator. They're going to lose a lot of recruits. They've been recruiting fairly well, with what they have, but in order to take the next step, I think at the very least the offensive coordinator thing should happen. Time to shift the focus to the NFL. Feel odd to be done with the season this early. I just can't get into the NFL. I've been a Dallas Cowboys fan for years, but I just the product is just so bad compared to college football. I can't um, I can't imagine that. I just put that there's not a single chance in hell that Oklahoma would ever hire a guy that like Broyles. Unless you're talking about his son, then possibly. But no, I don't think so. Um, there's a lot of comments about the $98 million. Oklahoma's not going to offer $98 million. I don't think when you look at $98 million, he's about 7.3 right now. $98 million over 8 years of his 12. I mean, that's a $5 million increase. I think if if Riley was in a situation where he asked Oklahoma to match it, I think they would wish him good luck. Um, let's stop point fingers at these kids. They make mistakes, but how does the team not score any offensive points in the second half? And I think there's a lot of blame that kind of goes both ways. The defense is somewhere in the 60s range nationally. It's not like we've played phenomenal. That's a good point, Ryan. I think he Oklahoma. This team, I said coming into this year, um, that Oklahoma should be defensively with the talent they had anywhere from the 15 to 20 range. And they just weren't there this year. So very disappointing on both sides of the ball. Um, Michael Hammond, OU is a no way out coach. Another clown response. Um, I mean, I don't know that they were blatantly outcoached. Michael, I know it's hard to fathom a Mike Gundy team outcoaching someone, but um, I think I think there was times for Riley tonight where he did not coach well. There was some drives in the second half where he just completely abandoned the run game, didn't even attempt to run the ball. Was much different than what the game plan looked like in the second half. So I think he tries to outsmart himself from time to time as well. Agree with SCLW. GT counter has to go. Uh, I mean, not saying that it needs to completely go, but I don't think it needs to be their bread and butter. I think they need to have a lot of. Um, I think they need to have a lot of really discussion about going to more of a zone scheme and stretch play. The stretch play is one of the basic run plays, and it's very very successful. Heard Eichard Lehman talking about this. Eichard said every team in the country and every team on Sundays has the stretch play in their offensive repertoire. Oklahoma doesn't run it at all. Why? I'm not sure. Private. Hey, Michael, thanks for the comment here. Um, Chad, I was a private pilot for one of LSU's largest boosters. Trust me, LSU money is way longer. Plus OU. Yeah, I don't think OU would match it. I absolutely don't think. Chris Grinch was absolutely not the problem today. The defense has improved exponentially under Grinch. This was in order on the referees, the head coach, the QB. I don't really put anything on the QB. Chris, I think he played about as well as he could have played. Um, so outside of that, I mean, I think I would agree, but I would just kind of X the QB conversation. You're right, Chad. It could be Clemson. I mean, and I think Oklahoma would want no part of that. Um, oh, you're right. You're right, Weston. We'll see. We'll see how that cracks up. Because it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You're right. They could get. I forgot about Iowa State playing in the Fiesta Bowl last year, so conceivably, um, Oklahoma State. I don't think you'll see three Big 12 teams in the, and it's not the BCS. It's the New Year's Six bowl games, but you could see Oklahoma State and Baylor both in the New Year's Six, which would put Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. I don't really want to. Yeah, I don't think so. Not a bad idea. Yeah, I think he's done. Um, a terrible job as a head coach, but don't think he would be a bad job as an offensive coordinator. Um, I think this is very, very accurate. I think he needs to, but I don't think he will at all. So, thanks everybody for joining tonight. We still got 86 guys. You guys are going strong. I don't. So I'm just going to address this last call. I do not think Oklahoma's going to the Fiesta Bowl. Just my thoughts, my comments. I think the 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 committee is probably not going to select 3 Big 12 teams for a New Year's Six bowl games. Could be wrong. I just don't think I don't see Oklahoma going to a New Year's Six bowl game this year. Like I said, I could be wrong, but we'll see what happens. I would say Alamo Bowl. That's where I think Oklahoma's probably headed. So guys, thanks for joining. I'm gonna kind of call it a night here. Appreciate everybody. Come follow me. Come follow me if you would, please. My Twitter is at JasonRay1. We'll start getting into this week. I'll go on with Mark on Wednesday. We'll talk about obviously talk about this. Talk about with the Big 12, maybe the Big 12 championship game, what that looks like, who I like in that one, and then we'll talk about Oklahoma really focusing on recruiting here. At the first period, and then whatever bowl game that they get selected to. So I appreciate every one of you guys. I love the conversation. Sorry it has to come to an end. Really just it was a great Saturday of college football. Unfortunately, Oklahoma came out on the short end, but love the sport as a whole. Just it's just one of my favorite things. In life is watching college football. Love this part of the year. So sad to see it come to an end, but excited for championship Saturday, even if Oklahoma's not playing, but still as a college football fan. So may do something, go live next Saturday for a little bit just to talk about things if you guys are interested in it. Hit me, give me some comments and say if you guys are interested in doing a live show maybe during the Big 12 championship game last year and just talking about the game, talking about anything college football related. So everybody, thank you guys for joining. You guys have a blessed night, and Boomer Sooner.